Welcome back. All right, so yesterday we talked about goaltending in the NHL's Western Conference. Today we're going to talk about goaltending in the NHL's Eastern Conference as we sit exactly a month away from the start of the NHL's regular season. Interestingly enough, Vasilevsky, number one in wins last year amongst Eastern goaltenders, 38 wins, 925 save percentage, 29.2 goals saved above expected. So after what was a good first half, he had a fantastic second half. He's had 238 starts since 2021-2022, which is, by my count, the highest number of anybody on the board. So Vasilevsky plays a lot. Vasilevsky plays well, and he garners wins. So he should still be gold, unless you feel like his wins take a bit of a hit, if you feel like Tampa's going to drop in the standings. But my guess is probably not. And so Vasilevsky should be good to be the best for your fantasy team this year as well. Bobrovsky has 214 starts since 2021-2022. 33 wins this past season, 906 save percentage, and 7.2 goals saved above expected. Goals saved above expected, he's one of the lower numbers on the board, amongst these ones anyways. It is interesting, there was definitely some coasting that Florida did last season during the regular year. That showed up once the playoffs rolled around, and they just turned it on again. So one thing with Florida to keep in mind is that this team could do the same thing this year. We might see 5, 10, 15 game segments where they don't look very good. Their stats drop off, and then come playoff time, some teams know how to do that. Most don't, but some do, and so that's one thing to consider with Florida. While there's a lot of really good players there, their individual stats may not be fantastic during the regular season because they're pacing themselves for the playoffs. Montembeault was third in wins. He was tied with Logan Thompson there. 31 wins for both goaltenders. 902 save percentage for Montembeault. 24.6 goals saved above expected. That's high. 169 starts for him since 2021-2022. He really came into his own this past season, and my expectation is it'll be another good year. He's got to be excited about the Olympics. That should lead to some good play from him as well. The one thing that's interesting is, so I've got the asterisks again above the goaltenders who play for teams that the Hockey News is picking to make it into the playoffs. They actually have Montreal missing the playoffs, and they have the Rangers making the playoffs. They have one team in the West and the East making it that didn't. One team falling out in both conferences. We know that while that's kind of, gutsy to try to call which team's going to be above and which one's going to be below the playoff line, reality is we always see surprises every year. So for Montembeault, the numbers were really solid. They were for Thompson as well. Clearly a man on a mission here. 137 starts for him, dating back to 21-22. 31 wins again, same as Montembeault. 910 save percentage, 26.0 goals saved above expected. So both Thompson and Montembeault, fantastic seasons. Their goals saved above expected, almost at the level of Andrei Vasilevsky. And so, yeah, pretty solid numbers all around by all four goaltenders in this top four. Then we get to number 5, and that's Ilya Sorokin. 227 starts for him, dating back to 21-22. 30 wins this past season, a 907 save percentage, and 17.5 goals saved above expected. I do remember during the season this past year, there was a point where his goals saved above expected wasn't very good. But he definitely got that together, and 17.5 is still pretty darn good. Igor Shesterkin of the New York Rangers has started 226 games since 21-22. So it is interesting. There's only one game difference between Shesterkin and Sorokin, the two New York-based goaltenders, who, when they play against each other, it ends up being pretty fun to watch. 27 wins for Shesterkin this past season, 905 save percentage, 21.6 goals saved above expected. My expectation is that the Rangers do have some sort of a bounce back this year. So we may see Shesterkin get more wins than Sorokin. However, Sorokin is going to play a lot of games because of the uncertainty at backup. There's still some discussion about Varlamov, whether or not he's going to be able to go this year, to start the year, when he's going to be back. And all of that will lead to Sorokin playing the lion's share of games until we see Varlamov back, or unless Riddick has a really strong start to the season. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Shesterkin, on the other hand, probably won't play as much as Sorokin, and I say probably only because Jonathan Quick is at this point one of the older goaltenders. I want to say the oldest goaltender amongst starters and backups going into the season this year now that Marc-Andre Fleury's retired, but I'm not sure that's the case, so I'll say I think he's close. I know Bobrovsky's up there too. But yeah, Shesterkin might end up playing more games if Jonathan Quick's game falls off a little bit. Woll. So Woll had 27 wins for Toronto. Yes, Stolarz may very well end up being the starter, but I think it's going to be a 1A, 1B situation. So the good news is that if you have a fantasy league that allows you to draft multiple goaltenders, maybe you snag both Toronto goalies, because odds are one, the other, or maybe both end up having good numbers by the end of the year. 909 save percentage for Woll, 16.8 goals saved above expected for him. He's had 75 starts dating back to 21-22. The interesting thing is that I saw people have issue with how high I had the Leafs in terms of, their battery, their tandem, but 16.8 goals saved above expected for Woll and 25.8 goals saved above expected for Stolarz. It would have been biased for me to bust him down. It would have been. The numbers have been fantastic for Toronto goaltending. The question mark becomes, do you believe that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be able to win as many games this year as last year? Did both Woll and Stolarz just have lightning in a bottle working for them this past season, and maybe we don't see them dominate this year? That's where there's definitely a question mark. But 27 wins for Woll, he should get up to about that, depending on how many games he plays. Or does Stolarz get the lion's share of games eventually? Kochetkov had 27 wins as well. He's got 112 starts dating back to 21-22. 898 save percentage for Kochetkov, but he saved 6 goals above expected. So his save percentage wasn't great, but he played well. And that's one of the reasons why I like to include the analytics on the board, because Kochetkov saved more than expected. His save percentage wasn't great, but he still had a good year. Markstrom, 26 wins for him with New Jersey, 218 starts dating back to 21-22, 900 save percentage, 3.4 goals saved above expected. It's a modest total, but again, we saw New Jersey's goaltending work as a positive for them this past season, whereas in previous years, it wasn't necessarily a positive. Interestingly enough, Merzlikins also had 26 wins this past season. He has 175 starts dating back to 21-22, 892 save percentage, and an ugly negative 8.2 goals saved above expected. So that's the number that you're going to be watching with Elvis to see if that turns around, because if it doesn't, there's a kid we're going to talk about when we get into this portion of the board who might push Merzlikins down. I wouldn't take him in fantasy. It's okay if you're watching this. Odds are you're probably not either. So I wanted to highlight some that might be top 10 this year. Cam Talbot. So another eyebrow-raising tandem was the Detroit tandem. How Detroit? Why? Because Gibson's numbers were fantastic last year, and Talbot saved 12.8 goals above expected. He had 21 wins. He has 175 starts dating back to 21-22. The one question mark you could ask with Detroit is, Talbot are we going to see his play drop off at all? He's getting onto the older side, even, amongst goaltenders, it still does happen. So I think there's a question mark there, but then Gibson just would take over the net if that's the case. And then you got Ullmark, 169 starts dating back to 21-22, 25 wins this past season, so just off the board, 13.8 goals saved above expected. So from an analytics perspective, Ullmark better year than Merzlikins, Markstrom, Kochetkov, who are listed ahead of him. And so we'll see how things work out for Ullmark in the Sens, but the Hockey News still sees him as a playoff team. Now, Merilainen's the backup with Ottawa, so while Merilainen had a good year this past season, it's part of the reason why you can let Forsberg go, right? Does that mean Ullmark plays a lot more games? And if he does, he gets more wins, and he ends up more towards the top 5 next year, right? So, lot to wager there when it comes to Ottawa. Good thing I don't bet. Now, bounce-back candidates, there's a few in the East with bounce-back candidates. Swayman, 22 wins this past season, so still only 4 wins short of Elvis and Markstrom here. 173 starts for Swayman dating back to 21-22. Negative 9.1 goals saved above expected. So, not great. Not a great season for Swayman. And if anybody says, well, Korpisalo had better numbers than Swayman, yeah, if Boston's going to get back in the playoffs, they're going to need Swayman to be better than Jonas Korpisalo. No offense to Korpisalo. Korpisalo's numbers were mediocre this past season. Swayman's were bad. So understanding that, yes, from that perspective, Korpisalo had the better year. But if Boston's really going to get back above the playoff line, or at least into the hunt, they need Swayman to be the guy. Luukkonen, 147 starts for him, dating back to 21-22. 24 wins this past season, negative 8.6 goals saved above expected. So, again, a rough year for Luukkonen. But Luukkonen's young, and I think it's easy to lose sight of that because he's been a part of Buffalo's net for a while, it seems. But he's still young, especially from a goaltender's perspective. So he could have some sort of a bounce back. Tristan Jarry, 186 starts for him back to 21-22, but we know that he ended up in the AHL last season. He had his struggles, 16 wins for Jarry, and we know Pittsburgh, and I'm wearing a Pittsburgh Pirates jersey, but Pittsburgh is not expected to be in the hunt for the playoffs this year. That could hurt his numbers, but the other thing that could hurt his numbers could be his backup goaltender stealing games from him if that takes place. Negative 4.7 goals saved above expected for Jarry. To be honest, I'm surprised it's not higher. I'm surprised that the goals saved above expected aren't a little bit uglier. But he didn't play as much, so maybe they would have been if he'd played more games. Pittsburgh, if they're going to make this season a little more interesting, their goaltending definitely has to be better. I also wanted to talk about some others, including Stolarz, 25.8 goals saved above expected. Fantastic year. The trick for me with Stolarz is I'd like to see what he does in an injury-free season. And once he's started 50 games, can he do that at the NHL level? He's never really been asked to do that. So we'll see how things work for Stolarz. Some goaltenders are really good backups, and then as starters, once they get into that 50-plus game area, they might get a little bit tired. Things get a little bit more difficult for them. Allen for the New Jersey Devils, 18.4 goals saved above expected. And he did them a solid by coming back on a very, very team-friendly contract. So, nice of Jake Allen to take one for the team. Kind of like his contract, I think it's $1.8 million cap hit? That's perfectly reasonable, considering his numbers this past season were very, very good. So New Jersey's kind of set in net for this year, and then we'll see what happens next season because Markstrom's on an expiring contract. Gibson, 15.3 goals saved above expected. So that's 15.3. Talbot, 12.8. Those are really good numbers, and even just your standard numbers, both Talbot and Gibson were both good. So this might be something to keep an eye on with Detroit. Maybe goaltending's going to steal some games for them this year and keep them really close to that line. Jet Greaves. Jet Greaves came on at the end of the season, had a ridiculous run while Columbus did as a team. He ends up with 14.5 goals saved above expected. He didn't play that much either. So that tells you that it's a smaller sample size than the others, but B, there's tremendous potential with Greaves in net for Columbus if he can pick up where he left off. And if he does, it limits how much Merzlikins plays, which could be beneficial considering the numbers, negative 8.2 for Merzlikins and a positive 14.5 for Greaves. So this is almost like Seattle with Decord and Grubauer. It's a very similar situation. Both of them backups who are going to be paid a lot of money. Younger goaltenders coming out and kind of saving the bacon of the goaltending for the team. Greaves, of course, in Columbus, and Decord for Seattle. Freddie Anderson had 9.0 goals saved above expected. His number's higher than Kochetkov's. He didn't win as many. The thing with Freddie Anderson is injuries. It's just injuries. He's got to avoid the injury bug, which is easier said than done at this point in time in his career. Varlamov had a negative 0.7 in terms of goals saved above expected at the time that he dropped out due to injury. So he wasn't off to a fantastic start, but we know that if Varlamov is healthy, he'd have to slot in ahead of Riddick, I would think. And so that might be a situation to keep an eye on. If he's cleared, if he's good to play, I would think that Patrick Wall will give him more starts than we saw backups getting last year, which could affect Sorokin's start numbers. So then the question becomes, if Sorokin plays less, is he a little fresher? Do his numbers actually get better? So there's something to consider as well. Shilovs in Pittsburgh had a negative 10.2 goals saved above expected with the Vancouver Canucks this past season. Has, of course, been traded to Pittsburgh. And does he get that opportunity to start? I think he'll get a look in the preseason. I think Pittsburgh's going to give him every opportunity to win that job. And if he can, then all of a sudden he might be a great pickup for you late in a fantasy draft, and Jari might be left out there at least to start the season if Shelovs ends up taking the job. Because with where Pittsburgh is at this point in time, I would think the best goalie gets the starts. I would think that all the best players make it into the lineup, and you want to see what you've got as you continue through this retool or rebuild, however you see it with Pittsburgh. And then on the how about side of things, I wanted to close things out talking about Dan Vladar, who had a good season with Calgary, 0.9 goals saved above expected. That doesn't sound great, but if you look at the goals saved above expected for Philadelphia, and honestly, you're better off taking your chances looking at the Sun, because they're ugly numbers. They really are. They'll blind you. Don't look at the Sun. 90 starts for Vladar going back to 21-22. The question could be asked with Dan Vladar about whether or not he's going to be able to take that starter's job with Philadelphia and do a really good job of it. I think he can. I think he had a good year with Calgary, and definitely a better year than we saw from Ersson, Fedotov, or Kolosov in the Philadelphia net. So at the very least, Vladar becomes an upgrade there. But yeah, he had 12 wins this past season with Calgary, and he will get every opportunity to be the starter for the Philadelphia Flyers, a team that desperately needs a goaltender who's going to be able to win them some games. So we'll see what happens there. But I covered every team, made sure I covered every team in these videos, and I wanted to make sure I split up the conferences so I can have an in-depth discussion of each goaltender and each team. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.